Hi, Pak here. A lot of people have been craving some Chaos Dot gameplay for 3.26, and with the recent buffs, here is my take on the archetype. Soulwind, Blight of Contagion, Occultist. The attempt for this build was to combine high clear speed with good easy to apply single target, explosions, and most importantly of course, cats. Now I know the crowd favorite Chaos Dot build is ED Contagion, but hear me out. I'm confident that this build outclasses ED in nearly every aspect. The main ability that we're using is Soulwind. It's an S tier coverage ability with decent damage, where the main drawback is its short dot duration. In fact, unaltered, it takes longer to cast Soulwind than the dot lasts. With a decent amount of cast speed and skill effect duration scaling, we get Soulwind to last up to 2 seconds. This is where Blight of Contagion comes in. Unlike its non-transfigured version, this dot has fewer stages and a debuff that lasts way longer. With a simple tap of Blight for about 0.7 seconds, we get the capped stages dot for nearly 10 seconds. This, in combination with Soulwind, allows us to have proper damage uptime, while still being fairly mobile and mostly a one-button map clear. This build excels at speed farming T16s, Big Boom Expedition, Breach, Blight, and thanks to the recent buffs, it can be a very solid League starter for filling out the Atlas and completing the 4 Watchstones. It is however not a meta build that will allow you to run T17s while watching Tai Killer log into RuneScape on your second monitor on day 2 of the league. Uber pinnacle content is possible, but requires investing in good gear and a certain familiarity with the content. My plan is to Leaguestart in SSF Hardcore, farm my heart out, min-max the character until eventually rolling a boss character to tackle Uber content. Let's jump directly into the PoE. The first thing that I want to highlight is in the top right corner. PoE has a new funky feature that allows you to create loadouts, and there you can see I've prepared multiple different endgame trees as well as 2 different leveling possibilities, and whenever you click one of those, it'll not only change the tree, it'll change the items to the correct setup as well as the skill gems. So whenever you browse this PoE, make sure to make it through the loadouts that I created on the top right. The skill tree this time around looks a bit different than usual. We got 2 new clusters to play with, one over here and one over there, and as well as changes to the Occultist Ascendancy. The Vile Bastion now grants maximum energy shield is increased by the chance to block spell damage, so you will see me invest into a decent amount of spell block together with Tempest Shield. It gives us enough energy shield to either replace Discipline or add on top of Discipline, and since we are an EB Mom tree, meaning hybrid life and hybrid energy shields, we benefit a lot from that change. One of my favorite notables is Soul Thief whenever EB Mom is involved. It gives us percentage energy shield on kill, which is a really nice mapping recovery. Another thing to highlight would be the Anointed Flesh. The reason I'm picking this one up is because in combination with Arcane Sanctuary as well as Harsh Lessons, it gives us up to 100% reduced freeze ailment duration, which kind of makes us freeze immune and allows us to pick up another big Pantheon instead of the Brine King. Stun immune we already are because of the Vile Bastion. Now we can pick up either Lunaris or Solaris, which are both fairly powerful in their own right when it comes to mapping defenses. Other than that, most of the other stuff we click on the tree is either life, reservation efficiency, and additional curse, or the classic scaling, which is either spell damage, increased damage over time, or chaos damage over time multiplier. The endgame tree has a cluster setup over here, which is your standard percentage increased chaos damage and damage over time multiplier. On top of that, I always love to use on a witch an Enduring Composure small armor cluster. This gives us naturally generated endurance charges whenever we get hit. This is important because Immortal Call can consume natural generated endurance charges, and for every charge that it is consumed, it becomes way more potent. It is one of my favorite defensive layers to do on a topside witch, and I use it on nearly every build. Well worth the 2-point investment in my opinion. This leads us nicely into our early game setup, because one of the biggest obstacles to overcome on a topside build nowadays is to deal with physical mitigation. It is no secret that topside builds have been suffering for a long time. There is no multi-hit mitigation. All of the attack block that has been added last patch is on the bottom side of the tree. Determination and Grace have been nerfed. We are an EB-Mom build, so our focus is on evasion and energy shield bases. And thanks to that, we go into maps with a fairly higher HP pool than some other builds do. But on the physical mitigational part, we have to tackle this as fast as possible. Now, we have really only 3 tools to deal with this early on. One of the most important one is to get endurance charges on kill, or minimum endurance charges. A really nice way to do this is to anoint Disciple of the Unyielding, or even earlier than that is to get a jewelry veiled that can unveil endurance charges on kill from Betrayal. The second avenue is to get Eldritch Eater currency implicits on both of your chest as well as your helmet. They give physical damage taken. They give you physical damage taken as lightning, which is pretty powerful. And the third one is to get as much energy shield as possible to just increase your EHP through getting good bases, like for example the necrotic body armor. One final thing to note on the tree should be the ascendancies. We have the Vile Bastion, which is just recently changed, got some more energy shield regeneration per second, as well as the cannot be stunned, and the percentage increased energy shield per spell block rate. We have the Void Beacon, which is just enemies have reduced chaos resistance as well as reduced life recovery. The Withering Presence, which is solely responsible for Occultist having the best Wither uptime in the game, as well as a good chunk of chaos damage and chaos resistance. Now there's the all-beloved Profane Bloom, which causes the nice explosions. And this is always what I will take at Uberlab, because explosions are not entirely necessary and facilitated through a unique ring called Mark of Submission. In this ring, we can socket in a curse of our choosing that will then, upon soul rending, curse the enemies, and they will be able to explode through Profane Bloom, giving us the nice explosions that we long for. Let's go over the skill gems real quick. Our main damage ability is Soul Rend. We have it linked to greater multiple projectiles during mapping because it gives us a lot more coverage. This can be replaced in single target situations whenever you do like a invitation, or for example Maven or the Uber Elder. You can replace it with Void Manipulation. We take Controlled Destruction for a good chunk of spell damage, Efficacy for both damage as well as skill effect duration, which we desperately need for Soul Rend. Then we have the Cruelty as our 5th link, and eventually when we can find one, we get an Empower. And until then, if we already have a 6th link before then, which is pretty likely, we can use Energy Leech. The second damaging ability is Blight of Contagion. A Vile version exists, and I do recommend getting that eventually. It is not extremely important to have it early on, but just so you know, farm your Blight of Contagion in the Mercy Lab, and eventually maybe in Uber Lab, grab a couple more, Vile them, get a Vile Blight of Contagion. It is a nice little damage boost. I link it to Controlled Destruction, Void Manipulation, and as well as Efficacy for a bit increased duration, because the longer our Blight of Contagion lasts, the easier it is to maintain our rotation. For our early game aura setup, I'm using Grace, Malevolence, and Tempest Shield. The Tempest Shield is replacing the Discipline because it also gives us a good amount of energy shield. Now, if you're playing in softcore and dying is not really a concern of you, you can always swap out Grace for Haste, so you can move around faster, and especially later into the game, once we get a good chunk of evasion through gear alone, I probably myself will replace Grace with either Zealotry or Haste for mapping, but this is a end game situation when the gear is already set in stone. The next one is Flame Dash, Shield Charge, faster attacks, just you moving around the map. You can also use Frostblink, whatever you prefer. And then we have Withering Step for applying Wither, a huge chunk of Wither immediately, and we don't have to wait for the Ascendancy. We have our Cast When Damage Taken Immortal Call setup that I talked about earlier as well. And I'm currently running Righteous Fire of Arcane Devotion. This has been changed in 3.26 to give us 25% more cast speed when we run it. This is not necessary to run, but making the build feel smooth is one of my main goals, and cast speed plays a big role in this. And we can run it fairly easy thanks to the additional flat 100% energy shield regeneration per second. If we pick up a little bit of life regen and EB Mom, it is split between ES and life, and we can sustain it with next to no investment. Feel it out, use it yourself, see if you want to use it or if you rather not. The final skill gems are the curses. In our mapping setup, we use two curses. One socketed into the Mark of Submission, and the other one linked to Bane that gives us a little bit of an additional chaos dot as well as easy appliance. Now, you really have three choices when it comes to what gem to put in your Mark of Submission. Whenever you use your Soul Rend and you hit an enemy, the curse linked in your Mark of Submission will curse those enemies. Now, if you use Despair, you will have the best clear damage possible. And if you use Enfeeble, you will have the most mitigation possible. Temporal Chains is also an option, which is kind of an in-between, because it gives us more skill effect duration, which makes your Soul Rend last longer, so your clear also kind of improves. And it gives us reduced action speed of the enemies, which is a fairly nice defensive layer for mapping as well. So really choose what fits your build best. I recommend to use Enfeeble in hardcore. Moving over to the items, you can see I have two item sets prepared, one being for early mid-game and the other one being like a mid-end game example. Now, when hovering over the items, you will quickly see that we have a fairly high suffix pressure on this character. Thanks to only picking up one singular suppression wheel being Instinct, we will have to get suppression on nearly every single piece of equipment and as high a tier as possible. Now, usually on many caster builds, I path down to Inverterate, but thanks to the changes to Occultist and the Vile Bastion specifically, we invest into Spell Block a decent amount. Now, that leads to us having a combination of Spell Block as well as Suppression, and we have like a fairly good early mitigation of spell damage. That means that the pressure of picking up spell suppression will come later into the mapping stage when we go towards, let's say, Uber Elder, finishing out the 4 Watchstones and tackling a couple of the pinnacle content. Before then, you should be fine with a couple of suppression on gear pieces, the Lucky Mastery and the 60 plus spell block that we have on the tree. I won't go over all the items individually, but I will tell you a method on how to craft mid-tier Chaos Dot items fairly deterministically. One big advantage of Chaos crafting is that on amulets, shields, as well as below item level 83 weapons, the only Chaos prefix that exists is the +1 to Chaos skill gems. Take this amulet for example. It has 3 really nice suffixes and 2 garbage prefixes. What you do now is you go to the crafting bench, you craft suffixes cannot be changed, and then you simply do a Chaos Reforge with Harvest and it'll guarantee a +1 to Chaos skill gems. Now if you get unlucky, or lucky in this case, you get another mod or even up to 3 mods on there, but the highest chance is to only get 1 mod, and then you can finish it off with like a slam or a crafted life on top of it, and then you have a really solid amulet. Another nice little early mid-game weapon crafting you can do is you take a item level 2 to 5 Driftwood Wand. You can grab it from like a Witch Mule or buy it from the vendor with a low level character, and you can take that wand and just throw Essences of Woes at it. These wands have a really high chance of hitting a +1 to skill gems, and the odds of hitting a +1 to chaos is around 30, and we can just demonstrate it right now, and surely we get extremely lucky. There we go. We have a +1 and high spell damage from the essence, and all we have to do now is to craft chaos damage over time multiplier, and we have a solid starting weapon that is not that easy to beat. The last thing I want to go over is the mapping versus bossing setup, as well as showcasing a boss rotation and what buttons I press in what order. Now, as I already talked about multiple times in the video, the Mark of Submission is the tool for us to curse enemies and then make them explode with Profane Bloom. You might be wondering, why I'm not using a curse on hit despair ring, for example. And the reason for that is that a despair curse on hit rare ring is level 1. And the discrepancy between a level 1 curse and a level 20 is huge. We're losing a huge amount of damage if we do that. And unfortunately, Enfeeble as well as Temp Chains on hit jewelry doesn't exist as far as I'm aware. So I think the Mark of Submission is our best bet for mapping, and it allows us also to have that flexibility of we either socket in the Despair or we socket in the Enfeeble for more mitigation. I am using the Enfeeble right now in this ring, and I'm using the Despair linked to the Bane for a single target. Now let's say we're facing a big boss, we do Uber Elder for our 4th Watchstone, and what would our bossing setup look like? Now all of the changes I'm doing now are optional, but this would be the ideal setup for tackling a boss. The first thing I would do is I would take out the greater multiple projectiles from our Soulwind and put in Void Manipulation, because one projectile is enough. Soulwind also has like a little honing feature that allows to like kind of aimbot at the bosses a little bit at least. Now the second thing I'd be doing is I replace my Mark of Submission with a rare ring. There could be like a frenzy charge on it, maybe some damage over time multiplier. And I'll take the curse that is linked in the Mark of Submission and I put it on, I link it to my Bane, take out the efficacy. Another step that you can do is put on Zealotry, replace your Grace with Zealotry, because Grace is not a particularly important aura for bossing, it is just fairly strong for mapping. So we take the Grace out, we put on Zealotry for an additional damage aura. Now if you want to go above and beyond, one thing you can also do is you can go into your skill tree and respec Profane Bloom. Profane Bloom is not particularly needed on bossing, so what we can do is we can grab Unholy Authority and that'll give us a 3rd curse. Now, having a 3rd curse opens up 2 possibilities. Either we go with Temporal Chains for a huge action slow, which is amazing for bossing, or we don't really care for this, we are experienced bosses, all we want is more damage, and then we can put in Punishment instead, which is a nice damage boost for bossing as well. Let's do a quick demonstration on normal Eater, so you can see my rotation and what buttons I'm pressing in what order. I will always start off the fight with a Withering Step. Put some Wither charges on the boss immediately, then followed up by Bane, puts up all the targets on the enemy, the Enfeeble, the Temp Chains, the Despair. Then we click Blight of Contagion. It only needs like 0.7 seconds to have like the full stages, and after that all we need to do is cast Soulwind. The Blight of Contagion needs a refresh every 8 to 10 seconds depending on the skill effect duration that we have at the time, and the basic rotation is just to keep the Blight of Contagion on there and fill it up with Soulwind in between. Whenever you can, put on a Withering Step and keep the curses up on the boss. That's about it. If you have like a Vile Blight, whenever your charges are full, just press it for some additional damage. And you know, that's about it. Let me just put out another disclaimer at the end of the video. This Chaos DoT build is a super fun mapper and it's a solid League starter. There are, however, multiple meta builds out there that have stronger scaling, that are significantly more tanky, that you will have an easier time gearing. Be sure that if you're gonna League start this character alongside with me, you know what you're in for and you focus on the content that the build excels at. You can have an excellent time with this build, but don't expect it to face roll all content on low investment. Now there's surely a lot more information I could give you and a lot of stuff to talk about, but I'm tired and this video is already way too long. Make sure to come by my Twitch, where you can see me progress the character live on Friday, as well as join the Discord if you have any questions. There's a channel dedicated just for this. I wish you the bestest of Leaguestarts, my gamers. I'm just ecstatic we get to play some PoE 1 again. Cheers.